So anyway, that was my little trip to Tallahassee, and I wish I could have gone to CPAC, but I didn't. But I'm here, so here we go. We've got the very unusual, first time ever out of the gate, Pictures Worth 1,000-Word edition. So we took picture submissions, and we're going to go through them as succinctly but as thoroughly as we can. It seemed like a fun idea, and it looks like it's going to be fun, and I didn't get them in any order. I pulled them in the order that I took them off the site in, but then once I imported them, they listed them by numerical order. So are we all ready to have some fun with pictures? Here we go. The first one is this one. That one is a screenshot from the Cadillac commercial, the recent Cadillac commercial. That's making a lot of waves out there because it's dividing the country precisely down the liberal conservative, or as I like to say, the steely-eyed missile man versus weenie line. It is, if you haven't seen it, you need to go to YouTube and look up the Cadillac commercial. I think it's Poolside, or I forget what it's called. It's terrific. I don't remember this actor's name. He was in Band of Brothers, and this commercial is the gutsiest, ballsiest, greatest commercial I've seen in 100 years. I watched this commercial, the best I felt about America in the last 5 years, because this Cadillac commercial is the first time I've seen American pride just unbridled and without apology. For those of you who haven't seen this commercial, I just can't recommend it highly enough. This guy just walks around the outside of his house, nice house, and he's talking about working hard, and he's got a couple lines in there. He's got a line right. I froze it right as he said this one line. This line actually stopped me cold. Actually had me think about something I never thought about before, because he says. He's basically, just a few moments before this, he says, yeah, the Europeans think we're crazy. Whatever. Just that alone I like. Did they think the Wright brothers were crazy? And he lists a bunch of other Americans, and he says, we went to the moon. You know what we got when we got there? Bored. And I just thought, man, I don't know if I've ever really thought of it that way. I don't know if it's ever really kind of dawned on me that way, but it's really, in a weird sort of way, it's actually really kind of cool. He's right. We went to the moon 6 times. Then what happened? And he kept thinking, oh, we did drop the balls. We got bored. We got bored with going to the moon. And it's like, there's something actually deep about that, I think. There's something really kind of shockingly deep, because, what we didn't do when we went to the moon is we didn't improve things. We didn't keep going. We didn't go to Mars. We didn't put a base down. Thank you. It's Neil McCullough. He's terrific in Band of Brothers. He's a great actor. And so that was kind of cool. And then a second later after this, he's talking about the lunar rover, and he says, there's a car up there. We left a car up there on the moon, and we left the keys in it. You know why? Because we're the only ones going back. That's why. Oh, man. It was epic. It was epic. And I know that the progressives were just howling. They just didn't know what to do, because you can't have that kind of pride anymore, right? You can't just have that kind of swagger. And I have to tell you one other thing about this. This commercial is written in such a way that it exudes confidence. It's not Neil McCullough. It's Buck. I guess Buck Confidence, who he played. It exudes confidence, and it exudes pride, but it's not in your face. It's not swag. It's not boasting. It's that kind of quiet confidence that you get when you've got the goods. You don't have to shout people down. It's a kind of difference between, I just did it afterwards, kind of difference between the kind of confidence that inbred, natural, quiet sort of knowing that you're good at something, that like guys like the Delta Force guys have, versus the kind of mall cop, kind of pump it up and try to impress people kind of thing. It's the difference between walking the walk and talking the talk. And he's not boasting in this ad. He's just saying, hey, this is what we do. This is what we like to do. And this is why, he's not even saying this is why we kick ass. He's just saying, let's get to work. I loved that ad. And apparently the Huffington Post, Jeremy sent me a link to it, did an article on it where they, it's like a national nightmare. This is the national nightmare. This is everything America shouldn't be. And I'm actually gonna go look at that article and read it, and I'll probably do a firewall about that whole thing. It's like, can't have any pride in anything, can't think you're good at anything, despite the fact that all the evidence says that you are. That kind of thing's not allowed. And there's a reason it's not allowed, by the way. And you're going to hear me talking about RK for the rest of my life, I think. One of the reasons it's not allowed is because they've done a survey where they found that if people are shown the American flag, like if a parade goes by, their vote swings to Republican for 6 months, 4 or 5 months. There's a latency when they're exposed to patriotic things. There's a latency that makes them more makes them more conservative. So I don't know. But the liberals hate it because it's all about working hard. As another thing too, it's about working hard. It's about the whole idea. You work hard, you get this reward. You get the nice house, you get the nice car, you get the things. Not tolerable in a world of enforced equality. No wonder they hate it so much. And as Sarge 56 says, exceptionalism, deal with it. If you don't like it, move here. If you don't like living in a country that's not exceptional, move here. We want people that want to work hard, and that's that. So I thought this commercial was just the best commercial I've seen in a long time, and it made me feel better about this country than I've felt in 5 years. It really did. Really, really, truly did. Okay, let's move on to our to the next image that I just took ones that I liked. I mean, I didn't have any particular rants prepared. Obviously, I just saw them just as they came in. So here's the next one I like. I like this one a lot. First of all, it's a great painting. The second thing I like about this is I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is probably the most perfectly constructed movie ever made. I'm not saying it's the best movie ever made, and I'm not saying it's my favorite movie. I'm just saying it's the most perfectly constructed movie I think I've ever seen. It is the most enjoyable movie. It pays off everything it sets up, and it pays it off pretty well. I mean, you have villains that you're chasing, and at the very end, God comes down from heaven and melts their faces off. That's a A-list payoff in my book. So I don't think you get ripped off there in terms of the villain not getting their comeuppance. The pacing and the story and the beat analysis, in terms of how it works, how it's done, is brilliant. As usual, with a good storyteller like Steven Spielberg, you know who this guy is and what he's about by the time you're 10 minutes into it. A lot of movies have that. Certainly my favorite movies have a little mini movie at the beginning. Big Bad Problem has a mini movie. It's a little 4 or 5 minute self-contained movie, and you could play just that, and you've got a beginning, a middle, and the end. And the Idol Rescue in Raiders of the Lost Ark is a neat little movie, and it tells you that this guy is a fortune hunter, and it tells you that he's capable and brave, and it shows you that he's got foibles with the snakes, and he's not above running when it's time to run, and he's a tough guy, but he's a decent guy. And then you see him in a university, and you realize that he's not just a thug, he's not just a brawler. You go immediately from him in the jungle to him in his classroom wearing his bow tie, and all the girls are falling for him, but he's a brilliant, brilliant guy. And so the real reason I like this picture, not just the movie, but this picture, and the reason I adore this character, is because like Han Solo, he's like Han Solo with a college degree. And like Han Solo, he's independent and reliable and rugged, and he's a man, and he does the right thing, and he's got a sense of humor. And so the reason I like this picture is because I think Indiana Jones is probably the kind of archetypical American male, although we've got a couple of those in this episode tonight by happy coincidence. And it's funny, I was talking about this just the other day, it was like yesterday or 2 days ago. My favorite 10 seconds in all of cinema is in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's my favorite 10 seconds ever. And I know many of you know this story. I'll tell it anyway for those few of you who don't. I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark in a theater in Gainesville, Florida. I was in a movie theater, packed house. And I had no idea what I was getting, and I was hoping for sci-fi. I was a little disappointed when I first saw it was a period piece. But once they started flying and the little line started moving on the map, the little, the path of the flying boat and stuff, I said, I'm in. But there's a scene in this movie where Indiana Jones is in Marrakesh or something like that. He's in some Arabian country, and he's chasing some guys down, and he's already been beaten up, and he's sick. He's probably got dysentery, and he's probably tired. He looks beat up and tired and worn out. That's another thing I like about the character. He takes his punishment. He's not kind of this immortal sort of, Roger Moore, James Bond, or, he gets hurt, and you can tell, and he's sore when he moves. It's really awesome. So he's going through the marketplace, and the crowd's part, and up ahead of him is the Arabic Indiana Jones. He's the Arabic warrior, and he's got his scimitar, and he's a giant of a man, and he's got this terrifying makeup on, and he's in a black outfit, and he's got his scimitar, and he's swirling it around, and in the space of 10 seconds of this guy doing his moves with his swords, you realize that this guy is the warrior of his culture. He's simply the best that they've got. He's a guy who's been training with a sword his entire life, and has dedicated his entire life to warfare. And then Indiana Jones looks at him, and there's going to be this gigantic confrontation. And all of a sudden, with a look that's perfect, it's Cairo. Thank you. I thought it was Marrakesh, Cairo. With a look that's the look is what captures the look is what it works for. He just reaches down, pulls out his gun, and just shoots him dead, and immediately goes on. And the thing about the look is, the look isn't an angry look. The look isn't a smug look. The look isn't a superior look. The look isn't I've got a draw on you look. The look is not a I'm better than you are look. The look is not take this, you rotten son of a bitch look. He's annoyed. He's annoyed. It's the kind of look you would get if a light went red on you while you were in a hurry. It's like, oh, for God's sake, and off he goes. And I saw it in a theater, a college theater, college town. I saw it in a college town, and people leapt out of their seats. They leapt out of their seats. They just, honest to God, got up out of their chairs and cheered. And I did too. And I think the reason that everybody cheered was because you didn't have time to think about this, right? There's nobody sat down and saw this and said, was this? No, you just bang, and people just instantly got out of their chairs. And I think it's because it was a visceral, immediate, crystal clear understanding of the power of the West. I just think it's just that. I think it's just that simple. Just about the power of the West. And before I go on, I'm going to go change the color of those lights behind me, because I'm looking at the feedback here, and the white light neon is giving me this jaundiced look. So if I switch to red, I'll look a little better. I'm sorry about this. I know it's a little odd, but it's part of the charm of the show. Might be a little better. I've said this 100 times before. The problem with this camera, I'm shooting this magnificent Stratosphere Lounge on the camera that's right built into my Mac. And the problem with the camera is you can't preset it. It's constantly doing a light adjustment, constantly doing a color adjustment. If I could just preset it, I'd be a happy camper. But it's the look. It's the look that Indy gave. That kind of, really? Do we really have time for this? I don't really want to kill. Oh, God. All right. That's why it works. And the main thing that's so beautiful about this is, and this will take me off on a little bit, but let's go back to the picture so we remember what we're talking about. The beautiful thing about this story, I'm quite sure it's true. As somebody suggested, it might be legendary, the story behind this, but I'm pretty sure it's true. It goes to show you what a collaborative art movie making is, and why directors who are autocrats and tyrants are not only just bad people, but they're bad directors, because so often an actor will come up with something that the director never thought of. The person you're looking at right here, Harrison Ford, was the guy who came up with the line when Princess Leia says, "I love you," when he's being dipped into carbonite. He's supposed to say, "I love you too." And he just turned to Spielberg and Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and said, "It just doesn't seem right. How about if I just say, I know?" And he said, "I know," and it took that moment into perfection. instead of melodrama. And Spielberg, to his credit, had the sense to understand that. But they're shooting the scene, according to the story. They're shooting the scene in Cairo, and Harrison Ford, the actor, I think actually had dysentery. He was very, very ill. Malaria, something. He was sick as a dog. Sick as a dog. Hey, they tell me I can turn off my automatic settings. I'll try that next time. And he was just so ill that he couldn't do what was scheduled to be done. And what was scheduled to be done, according to the script, was there was going to be a gigantic fight between Indiana Jones and this Arab swordsman. According to the script, Indiana Jones was going to get the whip out, and they were going to just do this big choreographed thing. And the reason they didn't do it was because Harrison Ford was feeling so sick. He just said, "Stephen, I just feel awful. I got the gun here. Can't I just shoot the guy?" And again, the genius of a guy like Spielberg is to see the brilliance of an improvement in the story. And that's exactly, he said, well, duh, of course. It became the best moment in the movie, and it became the best moment that I've ever seen in the movies. I've never, ever, ever have I had a moment I enjoyed as much as that moment, ever. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It was simply the best thing I ever saw, and it was by accident. Funny thing too about Spielberg and accidents, and how, and this just doesn't apply to movies, although it certainly is a big deal. By the way, thank you. I'm so sorry about that, Dave Olson. You guys must be thinking I'm an idiot. Steven Spielberg didn't direct Revenge of the Empire Strikes Back. Kirshner did. Sorry about that. That was a complete. I don't know how I screwed that up. But there's another story that I like even better about the power of accidents. And this was not just one accident. This was a catastrophe, just a catastrophe. But Steve Spielberg did Sugarland Express, which was a little movie. He had some talent. He did a couple of night galleries. A young director, young kid, did one movie. And they gave him Jaws. And Jaws was a big novel, but it wasn't a blockbuster movie because there were no blockbuster movies. Gone with the Wind was, giant studio thing. In my humble opinion, as a guy who's studied film for a while, I think Jaws is the first modern movie. I think Jaws is the first really genuinely modern movie. You look at Jaws today, it looks like a movie. You could screen Jaws today, and it would look like a modern movie. Gone with the Wind is not a modern movie, and even Patton is not a modern movie, but Jaws is. So what you end up with is you end up with Steven Spielberg, young guy, gets this movie, important movie, career buster or builder. And the entire script and the entire movie, the whole thing, the title character is Jaws. It's about a shark. And so they spend all this money on this mechanical great white shark. And this great white shark is the star of the movie. So they get out there on location, and here's this young guy in his 20s, I think. And they're getting ready to shoot the first scenes, and the shark doesn't work. It's not like the shark malfunctions. It just doesn't work. It doesn't move. It just doesn't move. And so now you've got a guy, and I've had to think on my feet like this before on a movie set as a director, but boy, you want to talk about pressure and stakes. Now you got a guy who's out on location, which is hard enough as it is, on location in water, which is infinitely harder. You got big-name actors all around you. You got Dreyfuss and Roy Scheider and Robert Shaw. And you've got a shark that doesn't work. In other words, you're dead. You're dead in the water, if you'll pardon the expression. You're doomed. You've got nothing. And so what Spielberg had to do on the fly is he had to improvise, and he had to imagine what he could show to show that the shark was there without showing the shark. And so he would show wakes, or maybe you'd see the fin, or even the fin really mostly wasn't working, but the real breakthrough thing was the barrels. Right? He showed those barrels. They put a harpoon into the shark, and the shark dives and takes the barrel down, and it comes back up, put another barrel into the shark. And I'm doing this from memory. I haven't seen it in a long time. But basically says he's going to dive again, and Quint says, no, he can't take two. There's no shark will ever take two, or three, or something like that, whatever the number was. So they put this third barrel into him, and Quint says, no, there's not a shark alive that'll take 3 barrels, and down the thing goes. And what you've done is something fantastic. you've basically, by having those barrels disappear under the water, you've heard from the shark expert that this is not a shark. And because you never saw the shark, even though you were supposed to have seen the shark in the beginning, presumably that opening sequence where the girl's torn to death, it's like, again, like I said before, little movie within a movie, right? The opening sequence of Jaws. You've got this beautiful, beautiful girl out there skinny dipping by the buoy out there, and she's cut to pieces. And it's a movie within a movie. If it had just ended there, it would have been a little movie. Where's Susie, or whatever her name was? And the guy passes out drunk and stuff. So presumably, he would have done a lot of showing the shark attacking that girl at nighttime, but the shark wasn't working. So you never see the shark. And you never saw the shark, you just saw the wake, and you saw those barrels going under. And when the barrels went under, and Quint says there's not a shark alive that can take 3 barrels under, and he takes the 3 barrels, you realize this is not a shark. And then you get to the essence of what Peter Benchley was trying to say, and that having the shark working mechanically would have utterly ruined. And that is that Jaws is not about men versus a shark. Jaws is about men versus nature. It's about them fighting evil. If it's just an animal, it's an animal. But it's not an animal. Jaws is evil. Jaws is Satan. Jaws is the devil. Jaws is the embodiment of the darkness that lies out under the surface of the water that you cannot see. And if you had seen it, the movie would have been ruined. It would have been an awful movie. You may never have heard of Steven Spielberg, because the 2 or 3 times where the shark actually works, when the shark comes up and bites Quint and pulls him into the water, the shark looks ridiculous. It looks silly. But what Spielberg understood was the same thing that Hitchcock understood in the shower scene, and that is that what you don't see is far more powerful than what you do see. Most people won't believe this is true, but if you look at the shower scene in Psycho, you never ever see that knife touching flesh. You have a fine, extremely potent memory of watching Janet Leigh getting stabbed to death, but the knife never touched her, not once. All you saw were hands grasping the shower curtains, and hands going up in defense, and blood running down the drain, which turned out was India ink, by the way, because it was shot in black and white. And you never saw the knife touch her skin, let alone enter her skin. If they shot that movie today, or any kind of horror movie, needless to say, you see a guy with a chainsaw cut a guy in half and all his guts would come out, and then you'd see his spinal cord and his beating heart and all this other stuff. But nope, Hitchcock understood that you don't show it. And by not showing it, you allow your imagination to do the work. And Dave Wellman says, what about Alien and Aliens? Aliens, you never really get a great look at the aliens in Aliens, but in the first movie, in Alien, you never saw the creature. You never really saw the creature, really saw it, until the end, when it's in the shuttle with Ripley. It's always in the shadows, it's always moving, and that darkness in the shadows is just so much more terrifying than a guy in an alien suit or a mechanical shark that's either working or not working. All of that off of the Indiana Jones thing, because, again, we got on that because of that moment where Spielberg improvised and Harrison Ford improvised and used the gunshot against that Arab swordsman. It's the greatest moment ever. I just loved it. I thought it was absolutely, absolutely fantastic. So that's that picture. Talk about movies all day. We need to do a movie show, too, in addition to other stuff. Let's see. I don't know what this is. I can't even read. Moving on to the next one. I just like this one. You know you're a history fan when you still get upset thinking about the Library of Alexandria. Wow. For those of you who may not know, Alexandria was really the capital of the ancient world, and was founded by Alexander the Great. It's in Egypt. Not too far from the mouth of the River Nile. It probably was right on the delta, I guess, at the time. And Alexandria was the center of learning for the world. It was the university town for the entire planet, for all of the culture, all of the civilization. And all of the great, great works were gathered together and placed in Alexandria in a library. And the library burned down. And nobody knows how much we actually lost. Some people have estimated it might have been as high as 95, 98% of all of the ancient learnings of the Greeks and all of the information that existed prior to the burning of that library. Well, you want to talk about Obamacare or Common Core as a single point of failure. If you don't have this stuff backed up and you've only got one copy of a scroll and all the scrolls go to one place and then that place burns down, you got a trouble. You got a real problem. But, when the library in Alexandria burned, some estimates were that we lost 95, 98% of all ancient wisdom. And if you think about that, that's enough to make you just, weeping's not the word. I mean, how many plays were lost? I mean, we know, we probably can assume that there were no major philosophical players, between Aristotle and Plato and Socrates that weren't at least mentioned by name, but we don't know that for sure. How many works what if you were to just take away 95% of all our knowledge? What if you took 95% of all the books that are out there, all the novels that are read? Most of them are Drek, but you take away 95% of the good ones too. I mean, you might lose all of Mark Twain. You might lose all of Ernest Hemingway. There may be a play of Shakespeare left or two. So, catastrophe. And just a catastrophe. It makes you wonder what knowledge could have resided there and whether it would have prevented the Dark Ages or shortened them. So it's, it's awful. And you also have to, that's one nice thing about the internet, needless to say, is the idea of not only is the knowledge digitized and it's digitized and it is stored in so many different locations. It's such a serial thing where there's so many people have access to it that it's very hard to kill all that knowledge now. Once it's out there, it's out there. In fact, obviously, if you have a picture that's not flattering to yourself or a politician, you can't get that back. Once it's on the internet, it could be thousands of places, millions of places. With that said, I might have talked about this once very briefly. I think you could make a ton of money by producing a set of books that would be essentially immortal. I think we've probably got the means to do that. I don't know what they'd be printed on. I'm not enough of an engineer or a chemist to really understand this, but words, pages that were etched, very, very lightly etched on some kind of metal foil or something that were literally would last a million years. That'd be kind of a cool thing to have, don't you think? If you had money to burn, if you had plenty of resources to spend on things that tickled your fancy, I wouldn't mind having a library of some of the most essential books that are on hard copy format that could never be destroyed. I think that'd be really cool. Fireproof, UV proof. You just mold and mildew, whatever. You just bury them out in the mud for a while, and people dig them up 3 million years later and just hose them off with water, and there they are. That'd be kind of cool. It'd be a neat thing to have. It'd be a neat conversation piece, and probably be a public service, I think. But yeah, so that's the library at Alexandria.